Welcome back, everybody. This is Tony the Hoofer running you through Football Manager 16. Last time we had a look through the buttons down the side, the various areas that we use to control the game. This time we're going to focus on having a look at our squad and trying to determine what areas we're strong in, which areas we're weak in, and what we need to identify as transfer moves. So I've sorted this by goal position. By position. We can see that we've got two goalies. We've got a very long-term injured 6 to 8 months, for which plays out once the season starts as 5 to 7 months. John Flanagan's out for some time. He's a player that I want to try and use because I had big hopes for him, and I'm hoping that in this game he'll come good. We'll keep an eye on things. We've got a lot of central defenders, and one in particular who's really not very good. Kolo Toure, as wonderful as he is not as good as our other options. So I'm going to look to move him along because he costs us each week £70,000, and that is a lot of wage to be paying, and is taking if we multiply his wage by 50, that's 350 £3.5 million each year he costs us. And if we were to move him on, we would get hopefully some sort of a transfer fee for him. I would imagine 100 or 200,000 pounds, and more importantly, his wage would be gone, and that £3.5 million would become available for us to either pay new players' wages or purchase a new player. So we'll see if we can get a reasonable price for him and get his wages off the books, because he's not going to get a game alongside these others. We've got one right defender in Nathaniel Klein, which is not good. We need backup there. We've got two left-sided defenders. I should actually explain these positions a little bit. They'll be obvious to people who have played football games previously, but a little less so for those less familiar. When we look here at GK, that's a goalkeeper. If we look here, we've got a defender who plays on the right or the left. If we look here, we've got a defender who plays in the centre. If we look here, we've got a player who's a central defender, a defensive midfielder, and a central midfielder. So he's an excellent player. He's got all the potential in the world. He goes up to potential 5 stars, the best on the planet. At present, he plays better than half of our team, so he's an excellent player. We're going to look to build the team around him, I think. We'll have a little look later on when it comes to tactics. So we've got our we've got a defender who plays on the left and a wing-back who plays on the left. In this game, wing-back is used in a more positional sense. A wing-back is plays alongside your defensive midfielders, which we'll have a look at this when we come to tactics, probably in the next video. Alberto Moreno plays as a left-sided defender, wing-back and mid, so he's quite a versatile player. Although he's not seen much game time under Jurgen Klopp, I intend to use him a bit more, potentially with a view to moving him up towards to being an actual midfielder rather than playing at the back. Lazar Markovic he's got a dark blue box. This means he's out on loan, whereas the bright blue box means that Stephen Corker has come in on loan. Knowing that Lazar Markovic is out on loan, we won't be able to use him this season, so we can ignore his excellent versatility. Lucas Leiva is defensive midfielder and centre mid. Adam Lallana plays on in the midfield on the right and the left side, and also as an attacking midfielder from the left, right, left, and centre. similar for James Milner. Roberto Firmino plays as a central striker. All of the others are fairly self-explanatory. Philip Coutinho plays as an attacking midfielder on the left and in the centre, and I think that quite adequately explains all of the positions. So players that we're looking to move along here, I'm tempted to keep Jose Enrique as backup to Alberto Moreno rather than forcing one of our youngsters in, but we'll have a look at our youngsters in short order. Kolo Toure is also likely to be moved alongside Jose. The rest of these players seem quite reasonable, so I don't think we'll be looking to move anyone else. We've actually not got a very large squad for playing in both the Premier League and in the Europa League, so we want to keep a large squad, even if some of these players aren't ideal for our squad. Joe Allen, I would look at askance in another situation, but we haven't got too many options in the centre of midfield. We can look in here to examine our under 21 players and look in here to examine our under 18 players that we may want to include in the first team, but what I'll do instead is I'll go to the filters and I will add under 21 players and under 18 players, and I will uncheck unavailable players. That will remove players who are injured, because we know all of our injuries at present are long term, and I will check to hide players who are not at the club. So that will get rid of our players who are loaned out. What I'm going to do now is look at our players with great potential. We can see that the best potential players in the club are Emre Can and Joe Gomez, with Jordan Ibe, Jerome Sinclair, Camille Grabara, I think he's Trent Alexander-Arnold. They're our young guys that we're going to want to keep an eye on. So what I'll do, he's got a different set of abilities to the other players that we see here. What we can see here is the gold star is the first team rating. Very good rating for the senior team. If we scroll over Trent, we see he's an excellent rating for the youth team. So he's got 4.5 silver stars, which equate to less than one or half of a gold star. So he's really not ready to be considered for first team, whereas Camille Grabara is a low rating for the senior team, but will benefit massively from exposure to the first team. So Jerome Sinclair and Joe Gomez and Jordan Ibe, I believe, we're going to move to the first team. These are all players. We can move them back down later, but we want to have them in the first team, so we're considering them in our pre-season games. Pedro Trivella I'm actually going to include here as well, along with Jordan Williams and Sheiji Ojo. All of these players have the potential to reach 3.5 stars, which are as good as Divock Origi. I'm going to say his name wrong constantly. I can never decide whether it's Origi or Origi, and I've been watching him since the World Cup when we first started looking at him, and still never managed to remember it correctly. So by right-clicking that list of selected players, I'm going to move them to the senior squad. And there's not really any other youth teamers that will be considered for first team action this season. Hopefully we'll see them progress by themselves next season. Jordan Rossiter, I'm a little tempted along with Brannigan, because they're at already 1.5 stars. They're useful players for the first team, so I'll actually add these two into the first squad as well. I'm going to uncheck the under 21s and under 18s, and we can now see that we've got a much better size squad for the amount of games that we're going to be playing this year. We're going to be involved in 4 different competitions: the Champions League, the Europa League, the Capital One Cup, and the FA Cup. So we want a good amount of players to select from. In this information area, we can see that some of these players are youth players, so that's going to mean they won't use up important placings in our squad. When you enter a squad to go into Europe, you can only have 23 players. The same for you can only have 23 players over 21, and I think the same applies for Premier League, but we'll have a look at that shortly. Youth players skip in underneath those age restrictions, so they're actually free. You can play them freely without having to consider your player caps. We can also see here that we've automatically set a number of these players to be available for loan. That's not what I want. I want to have these players available to me, so I've selected all of the players that had the loan tag alongside them, and I'm going to go transfer loan status with no status set. That loan option disappears, and now we won't be pestered by other teams to loan out players that we want to play. Examining our squad now, we've got 3 keepers that are reasonable. First team ready, I should say. We've got Joe Gomez, who, when we click on him, we can see that he can play on both the left and the right. Better on the left and the right, I should say. He's far better on the right than he is on the left, and he prefers to play in the centre. But he'll be a useful addition if we need to cover for Nathaniel Klein, whose name forever evades me. For some reason, even though he's one of the best players in this squad. We can see that we've got 4 options for the centre of midfield, which is a decent number. James Milner can play there at a stretch as well, although in this game he really doesn't seem to like centre midfield. Oh, he's not actually better than I've seen him previously, but still not best fitted there. He actually prefers to play as a wide midfielder, and that's not something that we'll do too often with this Liverpool team. We've got a very good number of attacking midfielders and strikers, so we're probably okay to focus primarily on getting a backup for right of defence, and depending on the options that we have available to us, potentially looking to replace Jose Enrique, get his wage off the books, and hopefully sell him for a little bit of money. That's our look at the squad and at how I've decided that we're going to have our team configured for our preseason. I'll end this video here, and we'll revisit things shortly.